All right, so this was an Ig Nobel Prize winner. Let me just see from when. It took the medicine prize. Yes, it was the 2021 medicine prize winner for a team comprised of scientists from Germany, Turkey, and the UK. It does not involve nose sex, unfortunately. Have a good one, Magnetar. Yeah, there's no that fucking title. What, of the paper or my stream? And hello, Green Bean. I'm glad to have you all. This is wonderful. My stream title? What's wrong with my stream title? The paper? The paper's title is a pretty good. It's pretty descriptive. It is published in the ENT journal, the Ear, Nose, and Throat Journal. The paper implies no sex. How? Can sex improve nasal function and exploration between the link between sex and nasal function? I'm sorry to disappoint anyone off the bat here, but there is no description of a penis entering the nasal passages. If that is what you are here for, I'm sorry, I can't provide that. So, the abstract kind of spoils everything, so we're going to jump straight into the introduction. No, Gardrek, there will be none of that here. It is not ear, nose, and thought. It is ear, nose, and throat. And it is, Ash, it is asking if Akum helps with nasal decongestion. And we'll see if it does or not. Yeah, the abstract covers everything. So the introduction here. Yeah. No. I am not prepared to put nasal sex into my NCBI search history. I'm sorry. So, a physiological connection between the nose and the genitals has long been proposed. What a banger of a first sentence, am I right, folks? A physiological connection between the nose and genitals has long been proposed. Banger. So we're going to do a short overview of this Wilhelm Fleiss guy. Just a great person. An otolaryngologist practicing in Berlin. Who, with 2 citations, yeah, 2 citations off the bat for linking between nose and the genitals. That one sentence has 2 citations, that's right. So this Wilhelm Fleiss guy was a friend of Sigmund Freud. Apparently, Freud's closest friend and confidant. So this is where we're going, folks. This is who we're dealing with. And it says the theory of reflex nasal neurosis was published by Fleiss in 1897, postulating a physiological connection between the nose and the genitals. Whoa. So what is... This guy is saying that there is not only a connection, but there is a disease that is caused by a disconnect between the nose and the genitals. If the connection is severed or incorrect in any way, there is a disease brought about by that called, as he says, reflex nasal neurosis. So how legit is this paper? Which paper? Are we talking about this Fleiss guy or this study that I'm looking at now, can sex improve nasal function? This study is very cursory and introductory. As you'll see, the number of participants is like 18 or 16 couples, so it's not a big piece of data. Kajin, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. So specific genital spots, according to Fleiss, located on the inferior nasal turbinates, played an important role in the nasogenital relation. So this is all really highfalutin ways of bullshitting, basically. I mean, we'll read on because the authors do point it out, but here's where it gets good. Freud and Fleiss elaborated on this theory in letters over the next years. And then there's a citation for that. Sigmund Freud, who underwent inferior turbinate surgery twice by Fleiss, even referred publicist Emma Eckstein for surgery, whom he diagnosed with nasal reflex neurosis. Oh boy, how did that go? Well, the surgery ended in a disaster, resulting in recurrent nasal bleeding and a disfigured nose. Just wonderful. Sniff enough and sniff hard enough and it makes you hard. No. Well, maybe that's what Fleiss thought. But yeah, so Freud incorrectly diagnosed his publicist with this made-up weird disease and sent her in for an invasive surgery by Fleiss, who gave her chronic nosebleeds and permanently disfigured her nose. So it then goes on to say bizarre theories of Fleiss of this neurosis never held any scientific validity. The incoming rush of air inflates a ding-dong like a bikey pump. Nice. A bicycle pump? A bicycle pump. Reports of the nasogenital relationship has since diminished in the medical literature. So, that sentence is pulling a lot of work, but it is saying that any connection between the nasal functions, the nasal nerves, anything to do with that region and the genitals was like completely pushed aside, buried by scientific literature because this one guy was just huffing his own farts too much and was just totally off base. But as we'll point out in the next paragraph here, parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves innervate the vasculature and glands of nasal mucosa with opposing actions. That means that there is a connection between the nervous system, not necessarily in the nose, but all over, including the nose, that is related to genital function and exertion, physical exertion. As we'll see, parasympathetic nerves and their neurotransmitters cause mucus secretion and vasodilation. That means that anytime you are triggering this parasympathetic nerves, the cellular response to that is causing mucus secretion in the nose, and the nasal veins, the arteries, not the arteries, but the nasal blood vessels in the nose actually dilate and expand. And it says, on the contrary, sympathetic nerves and sympathetic neurotransmitters have little effect on mucus secretion, but constrict the blood vessels of the nasal mucosa. So there's opposing actions going on of these systems, most likely to determine the effect of nasal patency. Great words. Great, totally understandable words. It means how effective the nose can work. It is known that physical exercise as well as hormonal changes can have an effect on nasal airway resistance in short and in long term. So there's 4 different citations for that, saying that if you exercise and have hormone, if you fix your hormones in some way, that your nose can work better. However, there are no studies investigating. It's 420. Thanks for the update, Ash. There are no studies investigating the effect of sexual activity on nasal breathing. This study was conducted to examine the impact of sexual activity on nasal breathing and compare the effect to a conventional nasal decongestion. Is, quote, love all you need to improve nasal breathing? Someone had fun writing this. They had fun. And I'm glad they did. That's very fun. So, the materials and methods where I think this paper really takes off. How in the world do you even go about testing this hypothesis? And I just want you to imagine the kind of hurdles that you need to go through to get these data. Like where do you begin? And these are the questions that I go into when I read these papers. Like, how are they approaching this problem? Because usually the title in a good paper will provide or show a problem that the researchers are then attempting to solve. This one is a question, and anytime you have a paper with a hypothetical question or a rhetorical question, you usually answer it within the paper, or it's expected to answer it within the paper. Why else would you be reading it? So the materials and methods section is usually the one that I like to jump straight to and see what the hell's going on. So we'll go there now. So this study received ethical approval. I would have been what it would have been like to be a fly on that wall. Hey boss, we wanna test nose breathing and sex. Can you sign off on it? So it's the ethics committee of the medical faculty of Heidelberg, and then this is the reference number for that specific office if you wanted to go and look at that. Implying this could have been unethical. Oh, it could have very easily been unethical. First of all, any research done on a campus like this, a university, or even, I assume, even a pharmacological research facility, pharmaceuticals, has to go through an ethics committee and a board like this whenever you're testing on humans. Very specifically, there is no pass and go without going to the committee first when you're testing on humans, and even there's ethics for handling live animals as well. So yeah, this could very easily be unethical if you just went behind the board's back. If you did that at all, you'd be unethical. Even if you went through all of the same criteria that these guys did post going to them, but instead of going to them, you'd be unethical just off the bat. Unethical people study is what it was saying. Okay. So 18 couples, each one male, one female. I'm sorry, the jury is out on whether gay sex improves nasal function. That is to be determined still. Enrolled in this study, resulting in 36 participants, because 18 times 2, that is math, folks. The study was conducted in 2020. All participants were healthcare workers and or the partners of healthcare workers for evaluation of subjective nasal breathing, a visual analog scale. From here on, it will be abbreviated to VAS, from 0, which is no impairment, to 10, which is no nasal breathing possible. So we are going 0 is the best case, 10 is the worst, was applied. For objective data, and here's really where I was like, wow, I have never heard of this, but it's wonderful that this thing exists. So objective data, nasal resistance and flow are measured with a portable rhinometric device, and the name of that device is Rhinomanometer 300. You see this all the time in scientific research. When you have equipment made by manufacturers, they always go for some really highfalutin name and then a really arbitrary number afterwards, and it sounds so sci-fi and cool, but like 1950s sci-fi cool. It's wonderful, and it is not disappointed here. Rhinomanometer 300, folks. And then these are the people who made it, the Atmos Mizentechnik, which I assume is a German thing, because this thing was done in Germany. So the measurements were obtained at the participants' home by themselves. This sentence really disappointed me when I got to it on my first read a little bit earlier. I was really hoping that they had like some teenagers in a back closet on the university campus. Like, hey, go in there and have sex, you kids, you crazy kids. And then like they would announce that they had come or they went based on the sounds that were coming out, and then just shove a rhino manometer up their nose and make them take a survey, because one of the time points is immediately after climax. You can see it right here. There's a baseline before anything is done, and then immediately upon climax. Yeah, I assume so. I never watched the show, Cajun. I'm sorry. It was a little past my time. So assessments of nasal function were performed at 5 specific points. Oh, here they're talking about it themselves. Namely, 1 before sexual activity, which is the baseline, standard. 2 immediately after orgasm. I can't imagine the mood killer that would be. But 3 30 minutes after climax. 1 hour, and then also 3 hours after sexual climax. It says, quote, immediately was defined as within 1 minute after sexual climax. That's still, you know, you got to remember, you're in post-nut clarity, and your brain is just on a blissful cloud, and suddenly you brought screeching back to earth. Oh shit, I've got to answer a survey and shove a rhino manometer up my nose to test within 1 minute. That's what I'm saying. It's crazy. So it was defined as 1 minute after sexual climax. And here's another key point. Climax in female and male is the okay, this isn't what I thought it was, but this is even better. This is the definition of climax as written by these authors by another paper. There's a citation here. So climax in male and female is the sudden discharge of accumulated sexual excitement during the sexual response cycle, resulting in rhythmic muscular contractions in the pelvic region characterized by sexual pleasure. Is that not the most horny definition you've ever heard? Does that not make your loins swell with blood? Oh, love it. The data were only obtained if both individuals experienced sexual orgasm. It's equality. Both of the partners must nut. Same data were collected for the study participants on the following day after application of nasal decongestant spray. This is an over-the-counter nasal decongestant, I assume. And here it just makes me go, ugh, why? It is the Nasal Obstruction Symptom Evaluation Questionnaire. Abbreviated NOS. Come on, guys. You forced that one. And I hate that it's clever. But they were used to assess pre-existing impairments of nasal function. They range from 0 to 100, where lower scores indicate better nasal breathing. So same as the 10-point scale that they proposed in the beginning, the VAS. So the NOS questionnaire, hate it, is a validated and reliable questionnaire developed by Stewart et al., consisting of 5 questions assessing nasal obstruction within the past month. Another author or another paper showed that a NOS score of 30 best differentiates between patients with or without nasal obstruction, with higher scores indicating worse obstruction. Of course. Thrust, bust, and decongest. I hate it, Cajun, but you're not wrong. So all participants also underwent prior anterior rhinoscopy by an otolaryngologist. So that means they had someone stick a camera up their nose to see if it was healthy or not. Because the tissues can be inflamed, and you wouldn't necessarily know based on on your ability to breathe. With breathing, it's like with IT. If it's working, you're wondering, you're not thinking about it at all, and when it's not working, it's the end of the world. When you can't breathe through your nose and you're sick, it's like, oh, I'm done for. This is awful. So all participants also underwent this thing. Participants with acute or chronic rhinitis or rhinosinusitis were excluded. So that's the swelling of those tissues that I was talking about. None of the participants had undergone prior nasal surgery or showed signs of nasal polyps. So that's good. These were otherwise healthy participants, which is really the gold standard with these kind of things. You really want people who don't have issues and then see how your treatment affects them. So statistical analysis, blah, 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 is fucking math. I hate it. But the one math point that I'll talk about later was a difference was considered statistically significant when the p-value is less than or equal to 0.05. And the p-value is the confidence interval, and a number closer to 0 means that the data is more harmonious. There's more it's more in line with one another. There's less deviation between extremes. It's more credible. This is a way of saying that the data is repeatable, and you see it in this study where you have very low p-values and also very high p-values. Interestingly, that'll be on the next page, I think. So the results page. We can just talk about this figure 1, which is probably the key figure in this paper. You know, this summarizes basically everything. So we have the sex, and with the flow, the dotted lines are the objective, quote unquote, and the solid lines, the continuous lines. Oh, no worries, Chapo. They really had one of their questionnaires is the nose. Yep. So continuous dotted lines to represent the objective data, which is by that rhinomanometer 300 thing, and the solid lines are the questionnaire. With the questionnaire, it's a 10-point scale. Remember, and 10 being I can't breathe through my nose at all, and 0 is completely fine. I can breathe through my nose without any issue. So we start here. We're looking at like an 8.5 or no, it's actually over here. So we're looking at a 6.5 average between all of the participants, which is, that's pretty high. That's saying that I am having some breathing issues with my nose right now. But look at this drop. It's precipitous. Immediately upon orgasm, they've doubled their subjective breathing scores according to the test. But this is cool. This is both with the spray and sex. They are in line with one another. So these data are not only saying that sex is an effective decongestant, but that sex is as effective a decongestant as the over-the-counter sprays that we are used to prescribing these people who suffer from chronic congestion, or even acute congestion with sickness, like with the common cold or something like that. I don't know how practical that is. You go to your wife and go, honey, I'm a bit stuffed up. Let's get in bed. I don't know. I don't know if that would work for you guys. Test it on your partners. Let me know how it goes. I am not telling you that, Ash, but this study might be. That's what I'm saying, Ash. I don't know how how optimal a choice this is. I don't know if it's necessarily, productive, especially because after an hour, the scores appear to just fall off. By 3 hours, the subjective scores are right back to the beginning, but with the nasal spray, it's still a little bit improved after 3 hours. So this is saying if you want a full day where you have no problem breathing through your nose, you should just have sex every hour. I think that sounds like a lot of busy work. I'd be exhausted. I won't, Squid. I will not. I reject entirely. So the objective data here is this using this rhinomanometer, which is testing air resistance by the nose. This is like I've never seen a rhinomanometer, but maybe we'll look one up right now, and we'll see what it looks like, and if it is what I think it is. Rhinomanometer. Yeah, diagnostic evaluation. Thanks. Oh, it's like it's almost like a CPAP thing. That's interesting. Sure. Here's a picture of one. Open image in the new tab. There we go. Let me switch the thing over. So here's a rhinomanometer that I found on the Googles. It is an instrument there's a tube that goes into the nose directly, and then this surrounding thing is like a CPAP almost, and the results are fed right into the computer. So the participants were all informed on how to use this equipment. I hope it was a little more handheld than that. Otherwise, wow. Yes, they had to use it within a minute of orgasm. Yep. Oh, you're welcome. I try to find the best music to really enhance what I'm talking about. And I had a feeling that fantasy Celtic music was just the right vibe for this stream. So these objective data, which is again using that fun-looking machine immediately after orgasm, within a minute. I assume that's for each partner as well. So we're talking like, one partner might just be over the moon on cloud 9, and the other partner is close, but fuck, I gotta put this machine on and do a questionnaire real quick. Hold on. And then you gotta get back in the mood. It's a real chore, I would think, but we're there. So sex as a decongestant by the objective data, it is saying that it is less potent, unfortunately. And at the 60-minute mark, even at the 30-minute mark, we were starting to fall down. Or after the 30-minute mark, excuse me. But, this is like 120, 150 milliliters per second difference. It might not be that bad. As we can see with subjective data, the participants barely noticed it. And then the objective data shows that instead of climbing back up after the 30-minute mark, it's actually plateauing, which I think is pretty interesting. It's hard to say what that means, really. It's saying that our perception of how our noses work is kind of funky. So we'll go with the results. Complete data of the VAS and nose scores, God, I hate that, were retrieved for all 36 participants, while rhinometric data were available for 16 participants, which is the 8 couples. Okay, so only half of the participants actually used the fucking CPAP weird machine. Okay. Average age at the time of study conduction was 32.9. This is a pretty high standard deviation because the sample size was only 18 couples. The average nose score was 47.4, so that's right in the middle, I think. Standard deviation is pretty high. The range was from 15 to 90. So someone reported that they had a nose score of 90, and that they had a lot of trouble breathing, apparently. All participants claimed to have achieved sexual climax. Well, that's good. At least they all nutted. So nasal function pre and post intervention, participants showed an improved nasal breathing after sexual intercourse and after sexual spray application. So, cool. Mean rhinometric flow increased while resistance and VAS decreased immediately, 30 minutes and 60 minutes post-intervention. Nasal breathing was back to the baseline level 3 hours after sexual intercourse, whereas it remained significantly improved 3 hours after application of the nasal decongestant, as we saw. It seems to really plateau here when you look at the objective data points. And it's this subjective data. People are saying that their breathing is still improved, but is not the same as it was immediately, even though objectively they are breathing better than they were even immediately after treatment. That's kind of cool to me. So, remain significantly improved. Comparison at each time point. The VAS scores were similar for both interventions before, immediately, 30 and 60 minutes after. Yep. However, mean post-coital VAS scores were significantly higher compared to post-decongestant values at the 3-hour post-intervention. So, that is saying what I pointed to earlier. That 3 hours post nutting, the participants were reporting that their breathing had returned to what it was prior to the humpity humps. And this is a really strong p-value. So in the rhinometric data, there were no significant differences before and immediately after both interventions. So, immediately after, there's not a whole lot, but it improves at the 30-minute mark. So there's a more gradual increase on the objective data versus the subjective. Right. In the sex group, this effect decreased after 60 minutes and was back to baseline 3 hours post-coital. In the spray group, nasal breathing remained improved after 3 hours. In order to evaluate any influence from pre-existing nasal function impairment, separate analyses were done for the nose. That's the more comprehensive pre-screening evaluation that they did. So again, this is what I wanted to show with this p-value happening here. Is this the one? No, it's this one. This is the rhinometric data. So this is the subjective data. Sorry, I'm just familiarizing myself with it. No, this is nasal flow. Okay, yeah. So the sex group after 3 hours, the data's going a little wonky. Yeah, on the Vaz score, there's no congruency in the data whatsoever. A p-value of 1 means that like this is totally incorrect, basically. But there's a lot of congruency between all of the groups immediately after climax. So I think what these data are saying is that post-nut clarity is a real thing that exists. I think that's what I take away from that. So this very distorted, blown-up image is bar charts for everything. Blue is the sex group, red is the spray group. As we can see right at the beginning, this is that subjective data score. The p-value is terrible. It's there's no consistency here. Immediately after, it's a little more consistent, but then we're right back to 30 minutes. It's kind of wonky, and at 60 minutes, it's pretty consistent again. And at 3 hours, that's a really good score. Making some bread, that sounds exciting. So this is very consistently saying that after the 3 hour mark, the subjectively you feel improved when you have received a decongestant spray versus having sex 3 hours before. So it really depends on the longevity that you want, because some of these points, especially immediately after, subjectively, these participants are saying they felt better, again, nasal-wise, breathing-wise, not just, totally better because they nutted, but they felt immediate improvement in their ability to breathe through their nose after coming. And that they felt even better after coming than having the decongestion spray. And this kind of lines up with all of the other data points. At the 30-minute mark, they're about equal, but it's still slightly in favor of the sex. And at 60 minutes, again, it's slightly favoring the humpity humps. And this is the rhinometric data. So this is flow, as far as how much air can move through the nose and how much resistance there is to air, obviously, traveling up the nasal passages. And again, going to this p-value, we can see that before the data is not great. There's apparently a lot of variability on both measurements, but as the time points widen, as we get further away from initial treatment and baseline, we can see that it's interesting that it's effective in almost an identical way with both treatments. Obviously, when you have a medication like this, that's like the hope that it works every time and that it works the same way every time. But what is surprising is that with sex, you observe almost the same thing. It's not obviously to quite the same standard, but standard deviation is a little skewed in favor of the sex group, where you have a little more consistency with the sex group versus the spray. But yeah, it's the numbers here are very one-sided, and proving the author's hypotheses. Like this is kind of like the dream scientists have. You just have like the perfect data. It worked every time. You know, I can't imagine that these researchers had many opportunities to do this, and like they cherry picked a selection of 18 that worked. It said that they had to exclude other people who had undergone rhinoplasty or other surgeries in the nose. But I can't imagine that they really had their pick of the litter. This was during the pandemic. This was in 2020. So, where were we? In order to evaluate any influence, right, we're done for nose. Nose scores below and above 30, according to this paper. A score of 30 best differentiates between patients with or without nasal obstructions, with higher scores indicating worse obstruction. So it's the same as the VAS in this study. So 9 participants had nose scores below 30. They showed significantly lower mean VAS scores. So they rated their nasal function as a 3.0 in the baseline measurement. Then the 27 persons above 30 who all said around 7. That's in line with what the nose thing is supposed to test for. But then, well, I hope then that Dove has chickens or some kind of bird, because I can't imagine she's whipping up her own eggs. Ugh, gross. Improvements were more tempered in the group with a nose score below 30, no nasal obstruction. In this group, the VAS score improved slightly for both interventions immediately and 30 minutes post-intervention. Yeah, so this is saying that with the people who reported that their noses functioned just swell prior to the study, prior to anything, those people were like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not like noticing a life-changing change, but it is slightly improved. So they went from 3 to 2.7 and 2.3. 3.6 to 3.2 to 3.4 for the spray. So again, subjectively, the questionnaire is saying that sex and the spray are both effective, and that the sex is maybe even more effective than the spray. Because look, this is the 1 hour time point. There's still a decline of 0.4. So we're going from 0.3 down and then 0.4. This one goes down 0.4 immediately. Well, it goes down 0.4 30 minutes later, but then is climbing back up. So for people who have already well-functioning noses but want to improve their ability to breathe, maybe look at consensual sex. Maybe. So the VAS score rose 1 and 3 hours after intervention for both groups. Those are the points there, indicating more nasal obstruction, as shown in Figure 3, which is below. However, all improvements were not statistically significant. So this is a p-value less than where they want it to be, or greater than where they want it to be. Patients with a nose score over 30, so this is denoting that they have some nasal obstruction, showed significant improvement in the spray group. All VAS post-intervention measurements were significantly improved compared to the baseline, And then this is a p-value that you want to see. Much better in terms of the numbers. In the sex group, all measurements improved significantly compared to Voss baseline. This is an even better confidence score, except after 3 hours. Again, where the data is slightly skewing, and that's not a great confidence value. So rhinometric data showed similar results, and then improvement immediately, 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Great confidence values again, and no improvement in either group after 3 hours. So we're returning to baseline after 3 hours for the group who already had subnasal obstruction. Interesting. Okay, so the people who had normally functioning nasal passages before, you can see that it doesn't really shift, but there is still some improvement noticed, just subjectively. And then for people who reported having issues breathing prior to coming in, sex and the spray were just rock and roll for them. Look at that. It's great. But it does fall off for the sex group after 3 hours. Okay. So, we're going to what the authors have to say about this. We report improved nasal breathing after sexual intercourse for up to 60 minutes and to the same extent as application of nasal decongestant, as measured with subjective Voss. So they are saying that their numbers are showing that subjectively people feel about the same after a decongestant and nutting. This was confirmed by objective rhinometric data as mean nasal flow increased while resistance decreased immediately, 30 minutes and 60 minutes post-intervention. I love the phrasing of it, post-intervention, because they're talking about. They're talking about orgasm, but they don't want to say it, I guess. Or no, they have to include the spray as well. So 3 hours after sexual intercourse, great. Nasal breathing was back to the baseline level, while it remained improved for longer after the decongestion. The effect was significant in patients with some pre-existing nasal obstruction, as we saw. So although Sigmund Freud and Wilhelm Fleiss already described a physiological connection between the nose and genital area a long time ago, this is the first exploratory study investigating sexual activity with climax and its impact on nasal breathing and patency. The strength of this study is the use of both subjective and objective measurements at different time points. And it's what I love about reading these papers, and it's what I said the other day during one of my Guild Wars 2 filler streams, that when I look at these papers, the thing that I look for, I hone in on with laser precision is how elegant the solution is to a rather complicated problem. This solution maybe not quite so elegant, because as many of you have pointed out already, what an absolute mood killer it is to put on what is essentially an invasive CPAP machine over your nose after, during sex, but after you orgasm. Just the logistics of that alone are terrible. And on top of that, you have to chart how well you're breathing through your nose on a scale of 1 to 10. The absolute mood killer, just crushing. But the solutions for that are still in a way pretty elegant. But there are other papers that do it even better. The beetle paper that I did last week was a shining example of this. Maybe not so much with the male interventions they did. So if you recall, there were 3 interventions that they performed on that beetle experiment. One was to remove the sensory antennae from the males. The other was to remove the foremost palpi, or like the mouth arm parts that are physically interacting with the female genitals, as they found. And then the third intervention, which is the cleverest, I think, and most elegant solution of all, is they smeared Vaseline on the female's hind quarters, over the genitals and just all of the rear area. Whipped up some pigeon... What? That sounds awful. But okay. That totally derailed me. Anyway, the Vaseline solution, I think, is just is brilliant, because with working with animals, it's hard to get them to cooperate, and my mind would not have gone to Vaseline as a solution. I think I would have first tried for something like a bandage, and I'm sure they had these researchers maybe had the same idea, but who knows? Maybe they're just more clever than me. They worked with these animals more, so they know what would have worked and what they had on hand. And whenever you're working in the field like that, you really get to jury rigging just everything. I remember when I was in undergrad, I worked on a mosquito research project, and I actually worked with the county's mosquito control board. They lent us, very, very sweetly of them, they lent us their equipment, and their equipment was a plastic shoe bin, upon which you sat a contraption made of some like 1x2s that were shaped at the edges to fit on the storm is ascending, on the lip of the shoe bin. And then in the shoe bin, you poured some of the elegantly named stink water, which was a concoction made by the mosquito control board themselves of a slightly fermented cat food and pond water, that just attracted female mosquitoes like none other. Nothing else. But you have on the wooden struts, you have a PVC pipe that is about 2 inches in diameter, with a computer case fan wedged into the top of the PVC pipe, and then you drape a bug net over the end. So you, in essence, create an updraft over the stink water that pulls in all of the mosquitoes that land in the water. It looked like shit, but it worked a treat. And that is my favorite part of science, of papers, and especially of field work that you see. I'm not going to do a lot of field work. I work with cell cultures. I'm a microbiologist. My field is the field of my microscope. You know, it's not the deserts of Mongolia. I don't need to go to the bottom of the ocean to observe my human cell cultures, you know. So in my line of work, the solutions aren't really as elegant. They're kind of just what we can do. I worked with a lot of molecular level stuff. So when I was a research student in the HIV lab, I was working with a string of proteins and manipulating that on different subspecies of HIV. And when I was at J&J, no, I'm not going to hunt the world for... I'll forgive you this once, Chapo. I'm not going to search the world for microorganisms like that. Although, there was someone who did that to invent PCR. And maybe I'll touch on that at some point in another stream. But my work at J&J was to develop a non-chemotherapeutic treatment for some types of cancer. And we did a lot of molecular work there to come up with the ideal, we called them targets, but these were different molecules to treat cells in a certain way. And my job was almost basically as a goalkeeper for chemistry. Chemistry worked with the barest of molecular targets. Like they had the shape of what they want their molecule to attach to, and then how to get that using chemistry. And they sent us like dozens of their best examples for us to put in cells, and the cells were always just like, fuck no, I don't want to touch this at all. Get this out of my face. And they almost never worked. So that was my job at J&J. I acted as sort of a windbreak for a lot of this stuff, or a foil. I'm not sure. But yeah, it felt like a lot of the time I was... chemistry would give us... where they're like, wow, these ones they're really good. They're really strong binders. And we'd get them into cell cultures and we'd be like, well, the cells don't care, so... gotta try again, folks. Yeah, no. I do not search the aisles of my local Whole Foods for exotic butters. If anything, I search the aisles of my local Whole Foods for exotic creams because I am lactose intolerant, and finding a lactose-free cream is quite a struggle, apparently. Okay. Back to the paper. The study, however, has major limitations. We were not able to collect rhinometric data in all the participants. This could be due to the participants... Oh, boy. Boy, howdy. Oh, what everyone was talking about before, like killing the mood and everything, here it is, spelled out. This could be due to the participants' inability to focus on the device before and immediately after intercourse. Yeah. This is like... Everyone was saying, oh, what a mood killer. How awkward would that be? Yeah, apparently it was. So the participants were all healthcare professionals, indicating their study group does not represent an equally distributed population, of course. Our relatively high mean nose scores and average VAS at baseline suggest that we selected participants complaining of nasal obstruction before coming in. This may be the reason why they agreed to conduct in our study, causing a selection bias in our study population. Yeah. You don't say. Yeah, but they did say. They spelled it out very clearly. Maybe this weird CPAP machine is kind of a mood killer, especially when we're trying to get people's rocks off. Anyway, the collection of data by the participants may not be reliable. Yeah, again, you're talking... This is a very awkward time to conduct scientific research, literally in the bedroom. As the rhinometric measurements were obtained at the participants' homes by themselves, the compliance with the guidelines cannot be guaranteed. Of course. Like, the only way to overcome that is to, like, literally have these people have sex on campus, like, in front of this research team. They had to complain of nasal congestion before we suggested the study to them. You mean there was none of this, OMG, I heard you were doing a study with lots of sex, I want in, BS? Maybe not. I could see them advertising this as like a nose-focused kind of study, and then after they came in, were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're gonna have sex. Do you have a partner? Is that okay?" But just completely blindsiding you. You know, yeah, I came for my nose, not my dick, doc. Come on. Also, the results of this study, though interesting, may not be generalizable. Yeah, you're studying like 18 people or 18 couples, 36 people, and 16 of whom had to do this weird juggling act with a CPAP machine during sex. Stimuli leading to changes in nasal breathing include physical exercise, temperature, alterations of body position, and hormonal changes. Neurologic symptoms and dentistry also has an effect on nasal reflexes. So there's a ton of citations for this. It was 6 something. Yeah, many. An increase in nasal patency with exercise is well known and described in the literature. Again, numerous amounts of research for that. Hansi et al., another team, described a decrease in nasal resistance after exercise in swimmers, runners, and handball players, which is cool. I think there's something to be said there, where physical exertion, the body just recognizes that it needs more air and so shuts off normal constraints to breathing when you're at rest. That checks, like, logically at least. To our knowledge, sexual activity and its effect on nasal breathing has never been investigated. Boldly going where no one has gone before. Good on you, folks. Studies investigating nasal function and exercise have mainly assessed isometric exercises. Yeah, so stuff that you can control, you know, not like basketball where you can go for a few minutes, like really hard, and then break for a little for just as long, or football where it's even the reverse, where you go pretty hard for maybe a minute or two before the play is called, and you have to break for advertisements or whatever, some bullshit like that. So this is stuff that you can do in a lab, like an exercise bike or resistance training. Wild et al. Reported that isotonic exercises causes a drop in nasal resistance and may have a nasal decongestion effect. Depending on the sexual exercise, one may experience isotonic or isometric contractions. Yeah, I guess they would, you know? Just those thrusting motions. They sure engage the core, I suppose. Investigating different intercourse positions and its effect on nasal patency would certainly be an interesting future study. You kinky, horny fuckers. We had this group engage in intercourse doggy style, and this group missionary, and we studied the differences. Several studies have focused on the duration of exercises' effects on nasal breathing. And we're retreading the same things. These report a decrease in nasal resistance. Saying the same thing. Our study showed improvements for up to 30 minutes. And this paper is showing that nasal resistance returned to baseline after 30 minutes and was lowest when measured between the first and 5th minute. Our study showed improvements for up to 60 minutes. So, these guys are saying that sex is even better for the nose than exercise alone. I'm going to break your back, Batman, with my pelvis. Now, that is in quotes, Chapelmon. I can only assume you have found this from a rather unsavory place, because I do not recall that quote coming from the movies by one Christopher Nolan. I ask you, sir, to provide your citations. Our study showed improvements for up to 60 minutes. Sympathetic reflexes are active in the nasal mucosa, the new one. I haven't seen the new one yet. And alpha adrenergic agonists. Okay, decrease mucosal thickness and increase nasal patency. This is saying that, again, what they said in the intro, that some of the nervous system benefits nasal breathing and others hurt it. That's what I'm saying. You know, I need to see your source. Give me a full written bibliography, preferably an MLA, but I will accept the what is it, MPA? I forget now. It's been a while. Sexual intercourse is not normal physical exercise. You don't say. Sexual arousal plus the climax at the end trigger not just sympathetic reflexes, but also parasympathetic ones. The interaction is not fully understood, but may be the reason for prolonged... I might be convinced to take Chicago style, Cajun. The interaction is not fully understood, but may be the reason for prolonged nasal patency. A study to further investigate this point would be a masturbation control group and a sexual intercourse without orgasm group. Just all the things that these people want to do. Oh, Inkmo followed me half an hour ago. Thank you. I had other things up on my screen, so I missed that. All of our participants reported sexual climax. Good on them. Whether multiple female orgasms would further increase nasal patency, or if the maximal improvement occurs after a single orgasm, is an interesting question for further exploration. So again, with the they could double this up, where they have a female only group. This is a female genitalia, one can only assume. Just riding a Sibian for half an hour and test their noses the entire time. You know, you get them to come like 3 to 5 times and see if each successive orgasm makes them breathe better. And maybe there's a sweet spot around like orgasm 9 where you can just suck typhoons in through your nose. And no one is doing this science. And I think it's important, just like these researchers are saying. Studies suggest that nasal airflow resistance decreases with intensity, but not duration of exercise. We did not investigate the duration of sexual intercourse in our cohort. However, extrapolating the results of previous exercise studies, one might suggest that sexual intercourse duration is not as important as just, quote, doing it, end quote. They are doing it in a scientific paper. Other interesting studies have reported links between specific physical activities and nasal function. Hasegawa et al. Reported that breath holding for 30 seconds decreased nasal resistance. Anecdotally, I've had that. I've had that, yeah, where you just hold your breath for a long time, and then when you let it go, you can breathe a little easier. Immersion of both feet in warm water. Okay, may have a transient positive effect on nasal resistance. That feels a little like oh, Squid, what the hell is it called where they have like organs in the feet? Like reflexology or something? That sounds a little bit like that. Performing 5 minutes of axillary pressure, a crutch reflex, leads to contralateral increase in nasal vasoconstriction. I'm not sure what a crutch reflex is. Whoops. It is reflexology, okay. There's also hand reflexology. So maybe submerging your hand in warm water will also improve your breathing. The science is out there, folks. Good luck getting the funding. Yeah, crutch. Reflex. Am I looking at the right thing? Yeah, crutch reflex. Interestingly, the first Google result is a paper called Nasal Reflexes, Implications for Exercise, Breathing, and Sex, which is very strange that happens to be there. And then the fourth result is, can sex improve nasal function? You know, it's really unhelpful when you say things like the crutch reflex, and all of your results are just going back to your weird quote about it. Maybe this is a definition. Well, that sounds wonderful, Ash. I do not have such things, Liza. And hello. OBS is saying that I have been live for 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'll show you all what I'm doing here. I'm looking up this supposed crutch reflex. Here it is. Normal nasal reflexes. The nasal tissues are these are overlooked by most people. Pathologic triggers. Okay. Postural reflexes, increased congestion with pressure in the ipsilateral axilla. You just got to keep Googling things over and over again. Really? Under the armpit, and you get better breathing. I'm astonished. Okay. Back to Acrobat. Yeah, that was a fun side tangent. Perhaps, maybe, I'm not sure. Performing 5 minutes of axillary pressure, crutch reflex, leads to a contralateral increase in nasovasoconstriction. So that is saying that your nose tenses up when you apply pressure under your armpit. Weird. Another paper showed that in nasal septal deviation, the mucosal response is more prominent in the concave nasal cavity. So that when you have a septum deviation, or a deviated septum, you get more mucus in this specific nasal cavity. Incorporating these findings could potentially synergistically improve nasal function even more. So finding a solution to deviated septum, applying a weird underarm pressure for 5 minutes, holding your breath for 30 seconds, immersing your feet in warm water. Are you writing this down, everyone? This is going to be on the test. So you're going to do all of this in addition to having sex, and you will be breathing right as rain. Again, the practicality of this remains to be seen. We're almost done here. If further studies prove that masturbation alone has similar positive effect, there might be a potential natural substitution for nasal decongestant application in some cases. Headaches, secondary to sinus problems, might benefit from such natural means, quote unquote. Super messy, yeah. You're not lying. Freud and Fleiss nasogenital reflexes may not be due to genital spots, located on the nasal turbinate. However, this study does suggest a physiological link between sexual activity and nasal function. Such a link warrants further exploration, if only for the interesting findings it's bound to produce. I'm right there with you. This sounds great. Rub one out to breathe clear. That is not what is said here, Chapo. This is very specifically have sex. No. Liza, this was brought up before you came in, but it's not just cardio, because studies have also been done with cardio alone, and they found that there was some improvement for 30 minutes, but that it quickly fell off. And this study is saying that they had positive results for up to an hour afterwards. So it is something in between in sexual orgasm and perhaps also the exertion of the act itself that is producing this increase in nasal performance. So the conclusion: sexual intercourse with climax improves nasal breathing to the same degree as application of a nasal decongestant for up to 60 minutes, as measured with a subjective questionnaire survey, the VOS. This was confirmed by objective rhinometric data, as nasal flow increased while resistance decreased immediately, 30 and 60 minutes post-intervention. Yes, and the author said that as well, Liza, that cardio helps breathing in the longer term. You are correct. It is on there. It is mentioned in this paper. So 3 hours after sexual intercourse, nasal breathing was back to the baseline level in the sex group, whereas application of the nasal decongestant spray, nasal breathing was still significantly improved. Only participants having nasal obstruction, this is the nose survey that I hate it, showed improvement after sex. So they said this earlier. The group that had the lower nose scores had much lower increases or differences with the results of sex. Sloppily. That'll help clear out the nasal passages. Look, Liza, I think that you could lend these authors your expertise in the matter. And perhaps you could get your heads together. Not the lower head, but the upper ones. I mean, I already fuck in a way that worked cardio. That is also what this paper is bringing up. That there might be differences in the positions you maintain during the sex that could be investigated. So, yes, ooh woo. Masturbation too. But I think even Liza, you'll concede that masturbation is often less intense, a workout, as it were, a physical exertion, than sex with another person. When you are trying to please a partner, not just yourself, more tends to go into it. Perhaps you'll agree? Chapo seems to agree. Depends on how. I suppose it does. I am not one to dampen spirits. If you want to go whole hog in tugging your hog, then I say God bless. I don't recall, Liza, but I believe you. I appreciate your expertise in the field of horny. I defer to you as an honorary PhD. That is pretty huge dick. So there is no potential conflicts of interest with respect to the research, authorship, and/or publication of this article. So these scientists are not working for the big sex industry. That's good to know, because you do get a lot of papers where you get like, tobacco smoke is really, really good for your health. This was paid for by Marlboro. Thank you. Oh, look at that. The authors received no financial support for the research. God damn it. Why doesn't anyone want to fund these efforts? You know, this is why we can't have good science in the world. These scientists are doing it out of their love for the craft. People, we need to fund these people. They can't work for free. Unbelievable. Okay, and that is the end. I'm so glad I had everyone today. This was a fun read. It went twists and turns that even I was not expecting.